You are very fortunate to have a thing called a file stream and scanners. You already seen scanners before when you were coding for me, right? So I could bring up some past code that we used before. Let's see here. So maybe we have a while loop question here. So remember when we created our scanner, we literally used this to create something that allowed us to take information in and read it. And we literally had to say scanner input equals new scanner system.in, where system in was literally the user's keyboard just sitting there waiting for input. The scanner was the program. The scanner, which is named input in our program, was literally a program that could ask the stream, i.e. the computer program waiting for input from the user, to say, hey, give me a next int, give me a next line, give me a next double, give me a next long. It could do that for us, and that is what a scanner is. A scanner is just a way for us to literally sit and wait for information or gather information as we move along. Now, instead of having system.in, did we just study a thing that could hold a list of information that we could read through? Yes. Yes, we did. Now, let's go take a look at something rather interesting, which makes coding files very, very easy and very similar to taking input from system.in as our control program that allows us to go and visit various things. Now, here's a big tip. For us, when we're dealing with file streams, i.e. information being read from a file, the scanner class requires an input stream. In this case, that input stream is the file that we create with a list of words. Now, if you think about it, in Java, I'm actually telling you that a file has to be associated with the stream in order to perform operations such as reading the contents or writing over contents inside the stream, i.e. stuff that's in the file. Now, a stream possesses characters, and in Java, streams are implemented with classes. Now, we've done that already. When we look at our code that we had here, we literally have a scanner, and we took in the input stream from the user. Okay? Now, instead of using an input stream, we're going to actually take the time and use the file as the input stream. Okay? So now, let's go about this. So, if you think about it, when we're talking about the file stream that we have, right? The file stream, otherwise known as the scanner stream, basically keeps track of the file position, which is the point where reading or writing the last occurred. When we talk about file streams are used to perform literally sequential access to the file. Okay? So, for example, imagine this thing here is a list that we find inside our computer somewhere. Okay? And I want to be able to read each one of the lines in this file. That'd be pretty easy, wouldn't it? Now, if you think about it, if I think of this as a file and then say, okay, a file is no more than a stream or list of characters, then we have something looking like this actually on the computer. When we open up our file and save it, we have something that looks like this. Drew84 becomes Drew space 84, the return character CR, and then line feed character, which is what we would represent as an LF or a /n. Okay? And then TIA 92, control line feed, and then this little -1. We call that the null character. Okay? Now, that null character inside a text file is also known as the end of file. Okay? We literally look for that little -1 as the last thing on our file, on the last thing in our data, and that's how we actually determine if a file has ended. Now, let's go and take a look at what the scanner class is. Remember I told you that we're using the scanner class. Now, the only thing that you've read, the only thing that you've used so far is next double, next long, next double, next long, and possibly next int. Now, you already know how to use a scanner. When you say new scanner, bracket, system.in, you're taking input or a file stream and uses it for reading the data as a program. We've used that already. We sometimes called our input variable keyword. Doesn't matter. You are the one that chooses that. Now, the thing that we can always ask the stream is, does it have a next integer? Does it have a next int? Now, if it has a next integer, this basically returns true if there is a next integer on the next as the next line. And then when I say next int, the next token. Now, what do you think next int does? You guessed it, this gets the next token as an integer. So we read it as an integer and it pops up. Now, you remember when we read our stuff and we put in, say, something that wasn't an integer? We had to catch the exception and handle it, right? Basically what happens is the computer sits there and looks for words and numbers. So maybe when I start my file reader for my file here, I literally said, hey, maybe I'm actually starting here at the beginning, and I say, hey, does this have an next int? If it does, read the integer. And you would say, if I asked if there was a next int here, it would say, hey, there's no integer here. There's no integer here, so I can't use it. But maybe it has a next line, a next string, anything, right? Now, if I was using a file that contained nothing but numbers, I could always ask, is there a next int? 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 While there are next ints, keep adding, keep looking for that information until we get to the end of file. We could easily do that, right? And the same can be said for each one of these special commands. Instead of next long, just think of a long number as something that is way bigger than what the representation for an integer is on a computer. So think of float as our real numbers, but then double is something that holds double the size of a real number. And then you can also think of int similar to float, and then long is just the doubled representation of integers. So when we have ridiculously big integers, we use longs. Now I can ask other things, such as our doubles here, and our next doubles. Now, I can also ask the computer to read, does this thing have a next line? And this returns true if there is another line to read. That's all it is. So that's all it is. So I could ask the input stream, hey man, is there any more to read? So if I was looking at this file here and I said, hey, is there a next line? So imagine I'm starting here on my list and my scanner's pointing at the very beginning. I would go, hey, is there a next line? Yes, there is. So then it would read, I could ask, hey, read the entire line and put it into a string. And then now my return, now my pointer, now where my scanner points is to the beginning of the next line. And I could say, hey, is there a next line? I could get the next line, and now I'm pointing right here at the end of the line feed. And then I could say, hey, is there a next line? And it would say no. And we could use that no, i.e. false, to quit out of this line. Now, basically, when you hear the term read line, this reads the line as a string. Think of these programs up here as giving you the ability to read in numbers, and then this one just reads in whatever is on each individual line as a carriage return. That's it. Now, what do you think reset does? Well, imagine you're going through this whole thing and you're trying to go and visit every one of the lines in this file. And you get to the end, but you don't want to close the file. When you hit reset, program runs, sets its pointer back to the beginning of the list, and you could go through this entire list again. Exactly what you did before, or do something different with it. So this resets pointer to the beginning. Alright, so let's go and take a look at some of this code because, well, you guys have never seen it before. I'm going to make sure that I have this code kind of up on the screen so that we can see it at all times, but then we'll also make sure that we have access to our code. Now, so last time we were working on test files. We tested to see if a file existed, and then we did a bunch of work to determine whether the file would be created, and then we could do things like create the new file and then catch whatever exception is being thrown if the new file has been created or not. Now, let's go and make a list. So imagine I create this list here. I'm going to call it list of words, and I'm going to store it in my folder for file IO, just like you guys. So let's do that. So I'm going to copy this over. I'm going to make a brand new list. We'll call it a text document. I'll paste it in here. And then I'm going to save this as a text file. Whoop. Alright, and we're going to save this as list of words. No, yeah, list of words dot text. Alright. And use text. Alright, so now that's our list of words. And now let's make sure that our list of words is actually installed in here. So let us copy the file list of words from our Dropbox folder. So all this requires is just a little bit of work. And I'm just going to copy that file directly into my list of word, my file IO folder. And I'm just going to copy the file. Don't make a link, copy the file in there. So if I double click on this, I should get that. That's perfect. Okay, so now that I have my list of words, which is here, what we're going to do is we're going to create a scanner. Now, you guys have never seen this before, but we are going to take our time and we're going to use our time wisely to basically read the code and outputs it to the screen. So if we read files, right, the first thing that we need is a scanner, right, and then we need a file. We need a file, and then we need to use, since we're going through every one of the elements in this list, right? What we need to be able to do, let's take a look at that list. We need to be able to visit each individual line on this list, right? And because we're visiting each individual line on the list, we need to be able to open the scanner. Instead of using system.in, we're going to use our file that we create in Java. So let's go and do that. And then remember, the file is going to be our input stream. So it's just think of it as an input stream as all the information that's here, and then this last little bit has a -1 in it. For us in Java, it means that it is the end of file. There's nothing left. Now, notice how many lines I have here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do I need this 10th line? No, I don't. I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to hit close and save it. Alright, and now, when we created our scanners before, let's go to file new Java class, file IO, let's call it file reader, let's call it file line reader. Now, for our file line reader, in order for us to read something, right, what we're going to do is we're literally going to create a file. So we go File, let's call this the input file instead of input. So before we used something like this, scanner input equals new blah 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 blah, right? And we basically had a scanner, we had a system.in. We're not going to use that today. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to call this the input file, right? We're going to call this the input file, and this file is going to be, remember, our file that we're reading is list of words. So we go new file, so we go file equals new file bracket quotation list of words. You'll notice that I use a capital O for of, And now that I've done that, you'll notice the Java is actually complaining that we actually need to import java.io.star. Oops, not buffered reader. So when you input that, now this is our input file. Now, remember, we're going to use the scanner to read from the input file. So now if we go scanner, let's call this file stream equals new scanner bracket input file. Now, in order to get scanner to work, we can click here and just import the scanner class. So we import the java.util scanner from the Java file system. Now, you'll notice that the computer is complaining. It's telling us that there is a possibility of us not being able to open the file or do something. So that's why scanner is actually throwing a try or a catch. Now, here's the best part. When we throw it with a try and catch, when we set it up with a try and catch, the reason why we have our try and catch is because the scanner tries to open the file and see what's in the file. If the file doesn't exist, the computer does exactly what we did before with our original test files program. It'll say, hey, the file doesn't exist, and tell us that we can't do the input stream. Now, let's go and make sure that we try and catch all of this. So remember, we create the file. There's no big issue there, but the problem is the try of the scanner. And then we have to catch and we have to catch some type of exception. So let's go and just catch the exception because we don't really care what it is. Now, the exception could be a file not found exception. It could be anything, right? So we have no idea when we go and catch the exception. We have no idea what's actually being outputted, what's actually happened. So let's go and get that information. So I'm going to actually tell my user system.out.println error with file. I'm going to say error with file, and then semicolon, I'll go system.error.println file error, and then we go and take e.get message like we did yesterday. So what this does is if there's an error reading the file, then we actually have to stop. Now, here's what we're going to do. In our scanner, we have created a file stream. We've created a file stream for which we can keep asking and asking and asking each. We're going to be pointing here, and we say, hey man, is there a next line? Now, if we're doing this over and over again, isn't this just a loop? So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's make a loop. While. So we could literally say while, bracket, file stream, dot. Oh my gosh, look at all of this. We have has next equals, has next long, has short. Oh my goodness. We could ask it if it has a next line. We could ask it if it has a next line. It returns true if there's another line in the input. Oh my gosh, if I'm pointing here at Jason at the very beginning of the list, the very beginning of our word list, then we could ask for the next element in the list. Oh my gosh, that's great. So here's the best part. You make your while statement. It says, hey, if the file stream has a next line, bam, do something, right? And all I actually want us to do is store what's on the line first. So that's what we're going to do. To store what's on the line, we make a string, because remember, next line gets a string. So we're going to go, hey, remember we said next line reads a string. So we're going to make this call, we're going to call this data. Let's call it line data equals, and I go file stream dot next line. And what that will do is it'll do exactly what we did here. It would read the entire line and then copy this entire set of strings and numbers, sorry, strings and numbers, not strings and numbers, characters and numbers, and put it in line data. Sweet. Now, to prove that, all we got to do is simply go system.out.println, and then all we're going to do is just output our line data. Now, that's it. So now, when we finish getting through this entire thing, the most important thing to do once you're done is go line data. If you're not doing anything with your code, you go line data dot close. And what that does, not line data, it's file stream. Remember our file stream from before? We go file stream dot close, and it closes the file stream, closes the file, closes the input file, closes everything, and we're done. And it should output all the elements in our list. Let's go take a look. Let's see what happens. If I run this, it goes Jason 15, Mama, Omar, Oma, Mohammed, Christian, Tyler, Omaha, and that. So now the next thing that you just need to understand is when we go and create a stream, we always have to have a try and a catch to handle any problems that we have with our code, i.e., remember, sometimes the file doesn't exist. Sometimes we have errors with the file, and we need to know what that message is, right? When we catch the exception could be an IO exception, it could be a file IO exception, and what we're doing is we need to catch it if there is an error, and that's why we have this try around everything that has to do with the scanner, right? It's very similar to what we did when we were working with our program, okay? All right, so what I would like you to do is this. For your next assignment, you're going to create an application that displays the content of a file containing instructions for this assignment, i.e. this assignment, the file that you see that's on the internet has something. Basically, it talks to you about the instructions for what we do, right? And all you're going to do is you're going to take the text that we have inside our thing and put it there, right? And then what I want you to do is I want you to print out all the information that I ask you for as a list. And then all you're going to do is count the elements in our list. Have a good day. Bye-bye.